Love is not what you need. Supernatural thing is not what you feel. You can see in thoughts. Is it really yours? Come and hold me now. I can make you feel.
Okay. Well, here we are. I have prepared this presentation here on Dreamwork, and I am, by no means an expert. But I have been dreaming for a long time now, and for the last little over 11-ish years, I've been like avidly recording my dreams and trying to decipher them, what they mean for me, what they mean for my life experience, and also how this kind of blends together with the things I've learned from the Law of One. So I have no idea how long this is going to take, so I'm just going to get going. So this is about Dreamwork. And so I'm going to first talk a little bit about myself, introduce myself here. So I am 42 years old. I am a wanderer, a seeker, a creature of the earth. I am a co-creator. I am, someone who's very curious about this mysterious thing that my brain is doing when I'm asleep. And I have had a few memorable dreams. I had some memorable dreams when I was a teenager. Here and there, like I had a few like stories I would tell, like, oh, I had this crazy dream, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't really until I had a dream that helped me change my life in 2011, and involves my husband, who's part of this group right now too. But I had a dream it was lucid. I had awareness, and I had basically I was inspired to change my life, to quit using drugs and get on a more like healthy, focused path. And this dream was like a huge part of that for me. It kind of brought me into it was like a reality check for me. And ever since that dream in 2011, I've been journaling. I don't know if you can see my little window at all, but I brought these are all my dream journals. It's quite a few here. This is my most current one, and it's almost complete. But it's even interesting to think about like the different kind of person I was back then. Like my first dream, I wrote on this little piece of paper, the one in 2011, and like my handwriting's all crazy. Like it's just like, and even my handwriting has changed. So, okay, so that's slide 2. Okay, so next slide shows a couple little, because it's kind of fun, pictures of myself. Look at my crazy baby picture, right? I was born in 1980. That's me as an adolescent. That kind of is like my fun-loving, optimistic personality. And then there's me in college, where I'm getting into more social stuff and using drugs and experimenting and stuff like that. So although my baby picture does appear that I'm tripping balls, that's not actually the case. In this picture where I'm drawing stuff here, I am tripping. So, there's some amusing pictures of me, a little bit about Jamie. Okay, what else on slide 2? All right. So, all right. So I have been sporadically journaling And dedicating myself to the first step on this journey to really making the best use of dream work is to journal my dreams. And that is the thing that works. Like Alice was just speaking about how her dream recall has improved since you think about it. It's basically self-programming. The more that you write down your dreams, the more that you just get in the habit of it. It's amazing, all the stuff that is happening in your brain. And also for me, like I have an analytical mind. I have a monkey brain. Meditation is not that easy for me. I mean, I can force myself to sit still, but it's not a method of self reflection that really works for me that well. And because I'm curious, I'm an explorer. I'm always curious about what I'm up to. What is my dreaming brain doing? Like, there's this mysterious, mystical part of me that's conscious while I'm sleeping, and I'm fascinated by that. Okay, so next one, and I like this quote, of course, from Kelly. I can't remember, if someone wants to correct me, he was a spiritual person. I don't know. I love this quote. Anyway, all right. So now I have some text for you, some facts, some information about dreaming. So we sleep for about a third of our lives. It's like 30 years, a 30-year blackout. And why not use this time for psychological or spiritual development? And as a person who loves efficiency, to me, this is hella effective time management. And many psychological problems arise because we don't know ourselves. We don't know our own minds. And according to this Harvard study, most people are unaware and not in the present moment for 47% of their lives. And I think back in the original Raw channelings, like Carla made a quip about how most people are asleep 100% of their lives. And but really, our unconscious minds are a wealth of wisdom. They both about ourselves and how we process catalyst and how we interact with the world, and all of like the things that all the catalysts that we come across during the day. We don't really perceive it properly, or we don't really acknowledge it. A lot of that is then processed and balanced when we're sleeping. And I think that's pretty neat. So more text here. Through dreams, we can experience direct communication from our own divinity. We can, it's a peek under the veil, as it were. And both if you're having a regular dream or a lucid dream, there is, the veil is very thin, and you can experience things in the timeless time-space reality. We can wake up to our own negative projections, our doubts, and the illusory limitations that we have placed upon ourselves. And what's also pretty fascinating about the dreaming mind is that, like, it's a time where your ego is somewhat suspended, where you can experience things in a very undiluted fashion, because you accept it completely as real when you're dreaming. And it's interesting what your subconscious is doing. And I've always found that to be very fascinating. And ultimately, our law of one connection here is that dream work has very serious applications for the first two steps in the discipline of personality. And also, in dreams, you can converse with your other dream characters, and these are archetypes. You can converse with different, because all dreams are like a projectional matrix of your own psyche. So you can converse with these archetypes, or even your higher self, archetype of all archetypes. So I think dreaming provides a very interesting time for you to learn about yourself. Okay, what do I have on my notes here? Okay. Oh, we're in slide 6. Okay, text. All right. So I've got some pop culture references coming up here. I'm not sure if any of you have seen the film or documentary about the archetypes. I mean, Oscar-winning film, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think this is such a wonderful film, and I love so much imagery about this film. And I have a quote here from Kuo, and it reads, "If you have the will and the faith to reach into your dreams and open the door, you may see that those things about yourself, your families, your entire life that seems so full of contentment had many hidden guests. You will see that your difficulties produced much gold. One glimpse beyond the lintels of that doorway is an enormous aid." Has anyone seen this film? Does anyone know what the heck I'm talking about?
Yes, I've watched it. It was wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, it's not so much about dreaming, but I just love how there's so many different aspects that you can access, and I don't know, it's pretty neat. I'm a big fan, and it was a fun gift also. So there we go.
It just got mentioned on the last episode of Inaudible that came out Sunday.
Oh yeah.
So good timing.
Right. All right. So okay, here, slide 8. Okay. So these 3 steps are known as the discipline of the personality. And the first 2 steps are something that you can absolutely explore with Dreamwork. Because within dreams, your ego is suspended. You are working through catalysts, and you are really understanding more about yourself, and this leads, absolutely, I would think, to accepting yourself. I have learned so much about my emotional suppressions. I've learned about so many things, because once you start like paying attention to your dreams, your subconscious will code information to you in symbology, and for you to kind of unpack. It doesn't always provide you with the complete picture, but you can be gifted with things called like recurring dream themes. These things are amazing. And it's taken me a long time to work out what some of these recurring dream themes really mean. But I think that paying attention to your dreams, and in this world, you can really do a lot of work in these first 2 steps about knowing yourself and, of course, accepting yourself. And there's a whole other world or another discussion about shadow work that I'm happy to share sometime. That might be a whole other presentation, but yeah. And also, I'm trying to have jokes here. So this font is called Dreaming Out Loud. Acknowledge it. It's good, right? Okay. All right. Oh, I also, with regards to this, the discipline of the personality, I had one quote here. From Ra. There it is. Okay. In the context of doing work in the disciplines of the personality, in order to be of more full efficiency in the central acceptance of the self, it is first quite necessary to know the distortions of the self which the entity is accepting. Each thought and action must then be scrutinized for the precise foundation of the distortions of any reactions. This process shall lead to the more central task of acceptance. However, the architrave must be in place before the structure is builded. So you heard it from the co-creator themselves that it is a very efficient way towards accepting yourself and knowing the distortions. And not in order to truly accept the distortions, you must know them. So for me personally, dreaming has been a very important tool for my progress on this path of the discipline of the personality. Okay, so let's see what's next here. Oh, more text. Okay, so I have some quotes here from Kuo, and it says here that we might suggest the general use of the dreaming state is that which allows the seeker to use the subconscious mind, such as one of your computer programmers would utilize the computer. The conscious mind is aware of the situation that presents the puzzle. It then, through its desire to solve the puzzle, provides that which it has gained of knowledge to the subconscious mind, and that information, when charged with the desire to find the path of love for the seeker, shall return to the seeker in what you call dreams that are coded in a symbolic fashion. So, yeah, you can program yourself, and your subconscious will respond. It may not make a lot of sense, but the more that you start to pay attention and start to learn your own like specific dream language, a lot of this is super personal, guys. Like you will, things may not make sense at first, but the more that you understand the language of your dreaming mind, the more nuggets and jewels will come through. So continuing, it says, to become aware then of these messages from the subconscious mind is the goal of remembering the dreams. One may learn this skill by reminding the self upon retiring for the evening that each dream shall be remembered and recorded as soon as possible upon its completion. Doing the intention of remembering the dream before you go to bed is good. But just the simple act of writing a couple things in the journal in the morning starts the whole cycle, and it's pretty powerful. These dreams and their coded messages then may become the topics, shall we say, for the meditation of the day. In this fashion, the subconscious mind is programmed to release information which may serve to reveal more and more pieces of the puzzle so that the feet may be placed more firmly upon the path of love. And I just think it's so neat. Like every night we have this opportunity to get coded information from our own subconscious, our own higher self. Like how cool is that? Like that we dream is part of the veiling process that was decided when the veiling and the experience for 3D life on planet Earth. And it's basically like that is the main doorway, is I forgot how it was put, but your higher self basically sits at the gate waiting for you to start conversing with it. And there's so much interesting stuff you can learn about yourself. So, okay. Slide 10. Okay, here we go. Next. Oh, more everything everywhere, because so good. But this is a quote from me. You may have heard me say this before, but every night your subconscious writes you a love letter in the form of a dream. Once you start reading those letters and meditating on their content on a regular basis, you open the door for your subconscious to begin more meaningful and instructive communication. The self reveals the self to the self. So there's so much interesting content in your dreams. Okay. Okay, so that's my sales pitch for the value of dreaming and paying attention to dreams, journaling them, meditating on them. So I'm going to tell you some personal journeys and some dreams that I've had that that have really helped me. So first, I'm going to talk about this recurring dream theme. So I've had this recurring dream theme, and it is really, I guess it would really started when the politics in the United States went nuts, starting in 2016. And, you know, it's still crazy, but like I kept having this recurring dream theme about having a sticky substance inside my mouth. It would be like a gooey stuff, and it would be on my gums, it'd be on my tongue, and I would stick my finger in my mouth, I'd scrape it off, and then I'd try and flick it away. And every time I scraped it out and flicked it away or tried to get rid of it, it just kept coming back. And, you know, it has this area, the mouth, the throat, this very blue chakra area. And so I imagine it had something to do with communication or being stifled in some way, but I wasn't quite sure. And with all these recurring dream themes, there's always, that is like it's almost a gift. Like, okay, here's something that you're not quite processing, or you haven't, you know, you haven't let it had its moment. You haven't let it see the light, and you haven't integrated it. So it's a red flag from your subconscious that there's something going on that you need to deal with. So, and, you know, during this time, you know, 2016 and Trump, and I have all these Christian family members, and I was angry about a lot of things that were going on in the world. And I lived in Minneapolis, and George Floyd was murdered in my city, and like there's riots, and I worked in Minneapolis in a retail store, and there was a lot of stresses, and but also I was harboring a lot of anger, and I would have like these, like I was really upset, and I had a lot of resentment against Christianity. It was supposed to be like this kind of moral, you know, the big religion of the United States, of the moral ground, and I just saw that not happening, and I was so angry. And I have, you know, my dad is Christian, my grandmother, who I love very much, Christian, and I would have these like arguments in my head where I'm like, oh, you guys, it's so wrong, this is so, you know, and I would just have these like kind of ongoing arguments in my mind, anger inside of me. And it wasn't until more recently that I was really able to put this recurring dream theme in perspective. And Perry and I were, I think we had some sort of thing. Perry said something, of course he apologized later, but he said something that was insensitive. And I was like, you know, also like hormonally poised to be pissed about, but he said something that kind of like, I didn't like or whatever, but I didn't talk about it. And I also, when we watched some show about this woman, and she was talking about how the divine feminine had been, you know, suppressed for millennia. And that also kind of doubled into my anger. It's like, I was pissed, and I just like, so this night I went to bed angry, and it's not something I normally do, but sometimes you know, I did. I went to bed angry. I didn't have the discussion. I always like to say you should stay up and fight. Don't go to bed angry. But so I had this recurring dream theme, junk in my mouth, and there was some familiarity about the setting of the dream that I was like, okay, the same stuff I'm navigating, but I was like, oh, I got this stuff in my mouth. And I had a moment of, I wouldn't say full on lucidity or conscious awareness during the dream, but I was just like, this again. And like, I scraped some off my gum, and I just like, I set it on a table, and I watched it, and it melted, and it went away. And when I woke up, I realized that this dream theme was connected to me having unexpressed anger. And it all kind of made sense at that moment about like how I wasn't expressing my anger and it was building up inside. I needed to get it out. And there's an extra little gem in there too of me actually taking the thing out instead of trying to flick it away or get rid of it. I like set it somewhere and I watched it. I let it have its moment. I acknowledged it and I watched it, and then it melted away and disappeared. So for me, this was a big win for me understanding what this theme meant. And of course, I talked to Perry and I was like, oh, we laughed about it or whatever, that I went to bed mad. And but then, it gifted me this realization for what that theme meant for me. And I thought that was super cool. So I don't know, does anyone have any questions? I don't know if I should stop for questions. I mean, we could do that at the end too, but otherwise, I'm gonna move on to this. My next dream, I'm gonna tell you about a lucid dream that I had. So I have a cool picture up for this time. Okay.
I have a quick question. I don't know if I should just ask now or later.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So the recurring dream theme that you were mentioning with the, like, you not being able to like express your anger. So once you had that realization and you were able to, express whatever you needed to express, did those dreams just go away? Like that theme at least? Or
I haven't had it since.
okay.
So this was a recurring theme that I've had, it's been happening, I would guess, around since like 2016, 2018. I would sporadically have this theme of the sticky substance in my mouth. And I hadn't had it a lot more recently, but like it wasn't until I had that, that drama where I went to bed all pissed and I had all this like, anger, that I realized it. But it can be kind of tricky to understand what the themes are connecting to, because so I have taken to sometimes if there's something like significant happening externally outside my dream, I will write that in my journal. Like if something is going on that's significant, like, so maybe like upon reflection on these dream journals, I can understand like, oh, okay, when did I have this dream theme and like what was going on? So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So after you had that insight about the meaning of the dream, did that lead to some more peace in your normal life?
Yes. And this, I mean, this has been something I've been working on personally for a while now. To be more like when I have feelings, I don't talk about them. It's maybe such a habit that I've picked up over the years. It sometimes just a matter of survival. Like when I have like a negative thought or like a bad, I'm being negative or something, that I would have a tendency to just kind of push it away and not deal with it, or like I'm embarrassed by it or whatever. But I've been trying to be more active, and Perry here can attest, but like I've been trying to come up with I would say, honey, can we talk about feelings? So that's been something I've been, as in my personal development, that I've been working on, is to not suppress the feelings that I'm having and really express them to my husband and work them out before, because the more that you push them away, or the more that you don't acknowledge them, just the more distorted they get. And sometimes they don't even, by the time you talk about it, you don't even know what the cause of what it was anymore. And like, I've been trying to be as like, again, with the discipline of the personality, to be more accepting of my thoughts and my feelings, and let them have their moment.
So is it fair to say that once you had the insight that you needed to express your anger or other feelings more, that was enough to stop the dream. That was like the message. That was the purpose of the dream. Is that your take on
Well,
it?
we'll see. You know, it's been let's see, when I had that dream, it was only like maybe like 3 weeks ago or something. So I think if I have that dream again, I will definitely have to really think about what was going on with me emotionally within that previous day. But we'll see. I mean, I think I've made a leap in understanding of this dream, but I am a human. There's a probability that I will be angry again and not want to express it, or not be in the comfort of with my husband where I can express this anger in a safe place or whatever. But we'll see. We'll see. I'll report back. All right. Well, with that, I think I'm going to tell you a little bit about this dream, this lucid dream I have. Now, it is my goal to have more dreams where I'm consciously aware. I've had a couple of them. Very becoming consciously aware when you're dreaming is it's a rare thing. It has been for me, but it is possible, and it is it's a really exciting experience. And one of the things that always, like, I've read books about lucid dreaming or whatever, and some of the most positive ones, or there's one, the 3 pillars of lucid dreaming that this one author says that are acceptance, friendliness, and kindness. I mean, people say, oh, lucid dreaming, you can control your dream. I mean, yes, in a way you can, but the true value of lucid dreaming for me is to just really be able to engage with the dream in a conscious way. And it's I've had moments of lucidity, and they're always so exciting where it's just like, oh, I'm dreaming, and you almost get so caught up and it kind of fades. But so I had this dream, and one of the things that I have when I do have moments of conscious awareness within the dream is to interact with my dream characters, because each dream character is a piece of you. It's a piece of your psyche. It represents like a different portion of, like you see a baby, and it could be your inner child. All your dream characters, they're all, I mean, you can have other entities that come into your dreams and blah, 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 but 99% of the time, they're all just portions of you, and portions of you that you may have suppressed or you don't want to look at, or they're just portions that are active or activated from the previous day's catalyst. And so in this dream, I was, okay, I'll just read right from my dream journal. I said, but like I said, one of the things I like to do is when I realize that I'm dreaming, I will go up to different characters in my dream and be like, what do you represent? And I ask my dream characters what part of me that they represent, because I find that to be the most interesting. So I said, okay, then I truly realize I'm dreaming and remember to speak to my dream characters. I speak to a woman, asking her what she represents. She says, ionic thought confirmation. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds cool. Okay, I see a man counting my beads, and I scoot past him to a man near the closet. He has glasses, and he is scared looking. Like when I saw this dream character, like he was scared. He was pale. He was almost like trying to like melt into the wall. He was just like a really terrified looking figure. And I asked him what he represents, and he said death. And another word that I can't remember. And as he says this, tears well up in his eyes, and he looks so scared. And I hug him, and I'm holding him close to me. And he says that he has worked with our friend Matt, and we had the Perry and I have a friend of ours, and who had just recently been dealt with or been dealing with colorectal cancer, and so probably a friend of ours that was dealing with death. And I don't know what that means that my dream character was mentioned him, but there's another woman, and she is associated with the man. I'm holding her sleeve during the hug. And so that's another important thing too. Like, if you have these scared portions of yourself in your dream, be kind to them and hug them and show them your love. I think that it's such value. It's like, you know, I heard about that as being something you should do during lucid dreams to, you know, interrogate your dream characters and show them love. And that is something that has always like resonated with me. And so when I become lucid, I'm just like, okay, who do I talk to? It's always been something that's exciting to me. So the third and most interesting, okay, so I'm holding her sleeve in a hug, and soon I see a cop, a East Indian man. He's very intense. He comes up the stairs and he's in a uniform, a cop uniform, and he's like pointing at things, saying this doesn't belong, that doesn't belong. And I reach this man and I grab his arm and I ask him what he represents. And he says, identity, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, what? And I ask him, identity what? And he can't pronounce the second word. He says, identity, blah, blah, blah. So it's some like, I don't know what that means, that he couldn't pronounce the word or I couldn't perceive it or whatever it was. But in my physical body, I was so intent on trying to understand what this second word that he was saying, that I tried to say it with my physical mouth. I ended up waking myself up. So that was the end of the dream. But I was telling Perry in bed still that morning, I was like, hey, I had a dream. There was an identity cop in my dream. And Perry was just like, I think we all have an identity cop in our dream. You know, the identity in 3D Earth and the United States has been such a contentious thing, and we're always bombarded with different things in the world. So it makes sense. But so that was my most recent lucid dream. And I guess I don't have a lot to, you know, really that I've really understood by that. But I feel grateful that I was able to embrace the one dream character that was so scared, and that he represented death, possibly the fear of death. Death, as we know, is not always just a physical death, but it can be the death of a way of thinking, or many other things. I think it's a transformative thing as well, but it can be scary. So that was my most recent lucid dream that I found to be most interesting. So, okay, so we're on slide 12. Where are we at now? Okay. All right, so next here, so the state of being, which you know as of the dream state, is most efficient for those consciously seeking to accelerate the evolution of the mind, the body, and the spirit. The dream is a symbolic representation of the catalyst which the entity is attempting to process. The dream represents this symbolic picture in a means which is oftentimes more easily recognized than the entity may find catalyst to be in its daily round of activities. Therefore, one may see the dream as a reminder and a crystallization of that which is the entity's next opportunity for growth. So, Latwi said it here, that sometimes this symbolic picture in your dreams can be more easily recognizable than just catalyst and recognizing it with your conscious mind, which I think is pretty cool. Like, we have this dreaming world can be an enormous aid to you in your conscious seeking, in your polarization, and the evolution of your mind, your body, and your spirit. So I think it has an incredible potential. Okay, so I think we're almost done here. I absolutely love this scene from the movie. It doesn't really have a lot to do with dreaming, but I just this particular scene, if you've seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, this particular scene, the rock scene, I find to be especially meaningful. And oh, what did I do? Okay, I'm scrolling wildly. Okay, so dreams are a partial record of the activity of the spirit. They are a reliable communication from the spirit to conscious self of the true development of the spirit's personality. It's quite the sentence, right? But they are a reliable communication from your spirit. Like, what in the potentiated experiential matrix of the great way of the spirit is happening here? There's some very, the potential of having, direct and reliable communication from your spirit is very exciting to me. And as we know, the inability to remember what is happening during the periods of sleep is very widespread among your peoples, for the spirit is hardly recognized and much less cultivated. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's what I've got here for my first dream presentation. And I have this final quote from Rumi here for you to ponder. So, that was just about an hour. Okay, I was wondering how long this was going to take. All right, so I open this up to questions.
Just real quick, that last quote,
Yeah.
what's the source?
Okay, so I wasn't that.
I found it.
Okay.
You might have to
Let me post it in the group
you
chat.
might have to keyword search it or something, because
Yeah, no problem.
I have this notepad file on my computer of just
Wow.
dream quotes from Confederation sources, and that's just one of them. If I was to guess, I mean, it doesn't
There's a
sound as-
Hatan quote from 1976.
Yeah, that's an oldie.
Oh, okay.
And when was the,
So, yeah.
When was the Latwii quote from? You know what year?
Sorry, guys, but in my old notepad files, I wasn't as fastidious about putting the dates and not always the attributions. So
And I think I may have been there at the time. It was obviously Jim channeling. You can tell by the diction. And Latwii was, I more than half suspect Jim is a wanderer from Latwii. That was one of his favorite sources. I have a question about symbology.
okay.
What are your views concerning the uniqueness of the symbology to each dreamer, or whether there's a universal symbology that one might discover?
Right. Yeah, that it's a tricky one. It's a tricky consideration, because I think that there's some symbology that is just your higher self knows that you're just gonna get. But I think that due to our collective mind, body, spirit, our common heritage of and probable multiple Earth incarnations, we have some things that are gonna be I had a section. I was gonna actually do a whole other presentation on dream symbology, but there are there's some common ones. I have this other recurring dream theme, and it's about I'm buying a new house, and the house is really huge and it's big. I'm thinking about, oh man, how am I going to afford this? And then a bunch of other people's stuff is still in there, and houses themselves can be a symbol for like different states of mind or new
Personality.
yeah, and so like since I've been focusing so much on some of these things, like these spiritual development and knowing myself, like I am moving into some new houses, I am exploring things, so that's kind of how I think there are some like universal ones, but I think how you interpret them as an individual is where some of the individual interpretations come into. Like there's a water in dreams that often represents emotions. So if you're in water in various ways, that's often you're dealing with emotions and what that. So I think there are some like overarching ones that are kind of universal, but how where you're at on the path and how you and what catalysts you're dealing with as an individual will have a big effect on how that symbology is going to work for you, and you can as a tool.
And what about prophetic dreams? Do you know anything about those?
Right. Well, I don't have a lot of experience. I've had some prophetic themes. Like I had a dream once, and like the next day that thing happened. I mean, it didn't happen the same way, but the same like theme happened to me. But again, I think always with these things, the higher the emotional charge, that's where like, ESP and the ability to intuit is really has its moment there. Like I don't have a lot of experience in prophetic dreams, but they exist. And you can have them.
To follow up on that, has anybody ever had the kind of dream where like it could be years later and you just have like an experience, you see something, you have that deja vu feeling, but it specifically seems to be something that you dreamed in the past? That has happened to me a lot, and it happens in these really weird ways sometimes where it's not identifiable by the imagery or anything. It's like a feeling tone, right? It's like something about it, the same way that like dreams are so good at making it all feel like completely real because it's all situated in a moment that feels like it makes sense, and one thing has already flowed from another. Like it's like you suddenly in your life flowed into directly that point that the dream can just drop you in without any context, right? It's a really weird feeling, and my interpretation of stuff like that is usually just very, very general. It's just kind of like a wink and a nod from the universe, kind of like the way I look at synchronicities. It's like if you invest too much in it, like you're kind of grasping at straws. But if you could just take it as a faith bolster, it's unlikely that is the wrong thing that you should be doing, so just my 2 cents.
Right. There's also a quote here too, and sorry guys, I haven't attributed it, but it says too that therefore to benefit most efficiently from the message of the dream, it is most helpful for the entity not only to see what the message is, but to realize that the message describes but half the learning. For if you see impatience, then you also must view patience for the learning to be seen as a whole. If you view anger, then also must you view love. If you view rejection, then you must also view acceptance. And in your meditative state, to be able to see both as a means for the creator to further know itself through your being and the various distortions which you hold within your being. So I find that interesting too, that you're given half, but it's up to you to find the balance, which again, what a neat thing, what a neat function that we have in these bodies on earth, like to get these like insights, however mysterious, but that just kind of adds to the interesting part of them.
So I just had a few.
Please go ahead.
I just had a few comments and then a question. So, it's interesting that you brought up the prophecy. I, I I don't feel like I've experienced those dreams too much, but I remember like maybe 7 years ago or 8 years ago when I was living in North Carolina, I had a dream that was in a particular apartment. And the dream probably had many meanings because just like you mentioned earlier about houses and where you're living, kind of, at least I've had that theme come up repeatedly, including last night. And it was funny. It was like 2 different apartments. And I was like, wait, I wanted to live in one, but then my parents are telling me to live in other. So obviously symbology, right? But it was like a dream 8 years ago where I was in an apartment that I don't think I lived there. In the dream, I recognized I didn't live there. But then I was like, this is a really weird apartment. So I always like having a nice patio with a view. And I remember in the apartment, I was looking at the patio from inside the apartment, and it was right beside the front door. And I'm like, that's a really weird layout. Like I've never seen that layout in real life. And I was like, that's really weird. And I didn't think anything of it. And then when I moved to California, moved back to California in 2019. Now, of course, you could say I looked at 14 different apartments, but there's only one apartment, and it was like literally the exact same carbon copy of what the dream was. And I end up choosing it not necessarily because of that, but it also hit all the other requirements. I don't live there anymore because my next door neighbor got shot like 30 feet from my front door. I was like, all right, it's time to move. But I lived there for like a year and a half, and it was very interesting. So I guess my question is, do you have any have you had any like interesting dreams, not necessarily involving prophecy, but like simultaneity or ESP? I've had more than a few dreams where I dreamed something, and I talked to someone else about it like the next day, and literally that dream reflected what they were experiencing like the day before, and I just perceived it. I'm like, okay, that's really weird. For example, there's this Reiki, I guess, practitioner, and I'm not really into Reiki. Frankly, I'm not into many spiritual services, but once every few years I'll connect with someone for whatever reason. So I remember this Reiki practitioner who I got a few sessions from, and then I had this dream one night, and I couldn't sleep. Like it was 5 a.m., and I felt the need to like email it to her because she was in the dream. And in the dream, I was in my old house, childhood house, and it was like it was almost like Lord of the Rings, where there was like these 12 ring wraiths like coming to get me. And I remember leaving the house, and I was in my front yard, and then I just realized, wait, they can't harm me, and like they all formed in a circle around me in shadows, and I just like waved my hand, and they dissipated. And then that was the dream. That was part of the dream. It was a dream within a dream. And then I'm explaining that dream to a circle of like people around a campfire, and we're all sharing stories about dreams involving death, because for some reason that dream I felt was associated with death, that I was explaining that the fire camp. And then I look to my left, and then I see this Reiki practitioner, and she's like comforting and crying this other person, this other male guy I don't know, at the side, and we're all talking about death. Like the theme is death. And anyway, I emailed her that dream, and she's like, oh my God. She emails me back. She's like, oh my God, one of my best friends was like murdered last night, and he was a very spiritual person. And she's like, that was must be what you're perceiving. And I was like, wow, So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on like those sorts of dreams, like where you kind of perceive something?
Well, the veil is very thin when you're dreaming, and I think that some individuals have a proclivity for that type of communication, for that to come through. I haven't had a lot of. Things have, I don't know, it's not as direct, but like when I talked earlier about the dream that I had that helped me change my life, like Perry and I used to, have a home business and do a lot of drugs and stay up all night. And I had this dream where I was, and this often happens too when I have like a really significant dream. There's like a table. Well, I'll come to a table, and there'll be another person there. And sometimes the table is a very meaningful symbol too. I can unpack that later. But the dream character is like, what you have to do, right? And I looked at him, and I was like, I had some awareness, and I was shaking. I was just like, I have to quit using drugs. And he's like, he nods at me, and he says like, well, if you do, this will be your reward. And then the whole room melted. And then I was kind of shown a vision of like what was my future. And that's what I understood it to be. And it was like, and it was my future house, and Perry was there. And like, there was some elements that do kind of look like our current basement now, which is his home office. And like, but for me, I haven't had a lot of those, but like that was a dream where I was basically, once I had the realization, like I was shown like what will be my reward if I, you know, end up doing this. And that was such a meaningful dream for me. Like it basically started this whole thing with me. Like, first of all, it helped me, you know, actualize and put into motion the plan for me to get sober, or both of us really, but yeah, neat stuff. It's totally possible. There is a quote that I have somewhere about like that being the prophetic dreams being a specific function. I think Ra talks about it.
I wonder if you would agree with this formulation, that dreams bubble up from the unconscious portion of the mind and do so in an attempt to communicate from that level up to the conscious portion of the mind. So here's the question: is there a feedback loop there, consciousness back to the unconscious, so that it's a mutual give and take, or is it all a one-way street?
Well, yes, I think that it can be a two-way street. And I've personal evidence, I have been starting to read the love letters, as it were, from my subconscious, and in return have been given more coherent subjects. And and I'm going to work on this too. This will be a thing, but I'm sure that it's possible. I believe it's possible, so it'll happen. But to seed subjects in my dreams, to seed concepts and questions, and have a dream about it, as it were, to for further development. So but the subconscious, it can't be commanded. I think there's a fallacy sometimes with lucid dreaming and controlling your dreams and blah blah blah. Like controlling is not, that's not really going to yield the long-term results and psychological development that I think that most people really want. So I think it is. I think it is a two-way street, but it takes effort. And I don't think the subconscious can really be as, commanded as the conscious mind likes to think. So
Alice has a remark.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I don't know if anyone has experience, but I've been experiencing a number of, I guess, like prophetic dreams, maybe, or yeah, like I think it started, like I started having a lot of dreams and I couldn't really remember them. And as I like remembered them, I think it shifted from like like I think themes that I think spoke to me. But I think recently, most of the dreams, at least in terms of what is happening, is not so much about myself. Like I dreamt that my college roommate was pregnant. So I sent her a message. I'm like, hey, haha, I had a dream about you last night that you're pregnant. And she was like, oh, haha. And then like a couple of weeks later, she messaged me and she's like, holy shit, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, she's like, how did you know? I'm like, I don't know. I was just, I don't know. And then I also dreamt that my friend was like falling, like she missed a ride on the roller coaster. I don't know how it happened, but like she was like falling. And I spoke to her and she is like struggling with her relationship and it's like very recent. So she feels like everything's just sort of falling apart. And like as I'm having these dreams, like I wonder, is it like sort of, I guess, am I supposed to reflect on this, or am I supposed to like communicate these things to the subjects whom I know? Like, am I just sort of the, I don't know, like the tool for, you know, our collective unconscious? Like I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with these messages. And then I also like dreamt that like someone really close to me is sick or has some sort of like illness. But like I don't want to raise alarms. Like, hey, I dreamt that you know, XYZ. So yeah, like I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with these messages when they're not about myself. Like I don't know if you guys have any experience or opinion about that.
And if you were to start to categorize dreams in terms of levels of dreams or depth that they stem from, would that include for you dreams that don't occur in images or words or events?
Hmm. I guess I'm not sure I understand that question, Stephen. Could you rephrase it?
Well, I kept a dream journal from 1987 to 1995. And in the process, I began to notice that some dreams came from a much deeper place than others. Now, I had long been in the habit of, and I think you just mentioned something of this nature in a text message to me, Nathan. I had been long in the habit of going to bed with a philosophical problem on my mind. You know, because for 4 decades, I was a professional philosopher, and I'd have to write philosophy, right? And I'd have problems that I couldn't get on top of the right structure or the right angle of approach to them. So I would just formulate those uh, late at night, just before I fell asleep, and when I woke up in the morning, the answer would be there. But I wouldn't recall having had a specific dream
Mm.
in which that issue would have come up. But I came to the conclusion that uh, there was really something missing in my dream journal that I actually wouldn't have been susceptible of being put in language anyway. But it was the deepest portion of sleep, and I don't know if I was receiving help from my higher self, if I was receiving help from Confederation entities, whether I was receiving help from my unconscious. I don't know. You know, I just know that uh, there seemed to be some source of assistance, and I don't think it would be ratiocinative in the sense that you could, you know, lay it out in any kind of linear form. It's just that there was work being done in the sleep state that I couldn't trace to any specific dream sequence that I'd had, but nevertheless, there it was. The results of it I got. The actual event I never got. I never succeeded in reaching that uh, moment where I could bring that experience into the conscious state, where I could see that actually happening.
Sounds like you were receiving communications from the mysterious world of time space.
Well,
That's what I was saying.
all dreams come from time spaces,
Right? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, there's like if you ever learn anything about dream yoga,
No,
yeah, that's something that's, you know, pretty advanced, where monks, you know, they basically, with the end goal of retaining conscious awareness from the falling asleep and through the entire sleep period. And it's interesting, they talk about this one state that they reach when it's like, it's not REM sleep, but it's like the non-dream sleep, right? Where you're not actually dreaming. And that's in your 90-minute sleep cycle, it's like, it precedes the REM cycle where you are actually dreaming, the rapid eye movement. But this space has been described as, it's like so interesting because it reminded me of that, like that one tarot card, that mysterious experience of the spirit or something, where it's like, it's described as being like a dazzling blackness, or like the brightest darkness you can see. And I just thought that was such a fascinating place. It made me think of that one tarot card, for example. But you go through quite the cycles like that. When you're not actually dreaming, that is the part where like your body is actually doing the the healing and the natural body functions that you do when you sleep, to like where you get the most rest and everything. So there are portions of when you're asleep and different levels. And Alice, to answer your question about what you were experiencing, now it's a tricky thing. You may want to talk to someone who it sounds like you have like some psychic abilities that are coming through in your dreams. And I don't really know much about that. I'm kind of thick as a brick when it comes to that. But I think there are some certain ethics around psychics and how they, like often it's the most appropriate configuration for, someone to come to you and the discussion to happen naturally. But I think I'm not sure what that, but I think there is some, like, maybe you could talk to a psychic about your experiences, and they might have like someone that you trust who is a psychic may be able to help you, instruct you on how to deal with those, and whether you should, call your aunt and be like, hey, I had a dream that you're going to get a car crash, like it can be like, I don't know much about that, but it's definitely something worth exploring. I think you seems like you have some psychic abilities, and like this may be part of your path and part of your catalyst to explore and understand these intuitive abilities and how you can help others with them. So
And
that's what I would say.
Also, Alice, with respect to your question, I know that sometimes when I do more focused meditations and, try to, when I do more focused meditations and more regularly, on occasion, my guides will talk to me in meditation, or sometimes I'll actively try to talk to them. And, sometimes they'll just guide me to, basically be near someone that I wouldn't normally be, just to offer a doorway. And sometimes when I ask more about it, it's not necessarily a conscious working, just sometimes being in their presence energetically, you can assist them. And sometimes a lot of times, at least in my experiences, they're not interested consciously to have a discussion about anything that you might think is spiritual, but I think just mere presence can help. And sometimes offering that door just by being near them, and they might go into a subject where you feel then comfortable in sharing what you learned. But sometimes a lot of what happens, and this is true in in-person meetings, like of seekers like us, is that just having proximity, there'll be a lot of exchanges. So maybe when you're having a prophecy about someone, just being there in proximity can have a difference, make a difference.
One of the strange things that I've seen happen, like the proximity thing, I think is like really great take on it. Like you put yourself in proximity to someone in this kind of situation, and then you don't do anything, and then all of a sudden they come out with something they would never normally say that you didn't expect, and they start like they bring it up with you. And anyway, but I think I also would completely, like when you said that, my thought was like it's the professional ethics of psychics, right? So there's like a whole, I think ultimately it's up to you, right? Nobody can tell you, but there are a lot of people who've dealt with that. And I think through the law of one, the discussion of free will is the ultimate on that. So
yes, the whole intersubjectivity dimension to dreaming is also a matter of interest. I remember back when both my wife at the time, Marilyn, who's since passed away, and I were keeping dream journals. We became much more aware of our dreams as a result of it. And sometimes she would be angry with me for something that I had done in her dream. And I was, how can I be held responsible for that? And yet, somehow I was, and there seemed to be a propriety there, but I couldn't put my finger on the principle behind it.
That's funny. I had a lucid dream once where I was able to come to a table and speak with a guide or whoever it was, and he at one point he hugged me and he asked me like, "Well, have you met your first husband yet?" And like I still have my one husband. Like, yes, what do you mean by first? I mean, I didn't have like that realization, it was a big deal. I was like, well, what do you mean my first husband? Like, and then when I woke up that morning, I was just like, oh my God, do I tell him? Like, do I tell my actual husband that my dream guide was saying something about my first husband? But I was able to hold on to that information for like a whole 30 minutes or something before it came bubbling out. But my husband took it like a champ. He's like, oh yeah, I don't know. He probably meant the cat or something. So.
With respect to the first husband and also this concept of prophecy, I think it's important to recognize, at least in the Law of One material, there's this idea of probability vortices, so that nothing is really fully set in stone. And that's at least been true in my understanding of like inclinations of future energy, right, so to speak, with respect to prophecy and such.
Right. Yeah. Probabilities.
Further on this head, I could read you a little bit of Marilyn's dream journal. It took me years to bring myself to actually read it after she passed away, but I figure now that she's been gone for a couple of decades, it's acceptable. This is March 10th, 1989. I got up in the morning. Steve was to leave to Louisville, and I walked to the kitchen. Jim had sent a letter to Steve with info about the effects of channeling and clearing, etc. Example, one could get depressed. I put the letter down and got angry again. So, this is the first time I realized that there was something about my trips to Louisville that didn't sit right with Marilyn back in that day. And so, and that actually that's not something that I had just done in the dream. I was in the habit of doing that. So that actually came out in the dream. But it's quite likely, in fact, I think it's almost a near certainty, that Marilyn would not have acknowledged that she was angry with me for going to Louisville, because, theoretically, at least, she was supportive of that activity. And yet there was the fact that, I would go off to Louisville. Now, actually, I didn't go off to Louisville when they were in town. I only went to Louisville on my own when they were up in Detroit visiting family. So somehow that's still registered as me being gone away from them. So, I don't know for what reason. That was 1989.
Thanks for sharing that.
At first, I thought you were reading from your current wife's journal, and I was like, "Is that ethical?"
No. She wouldn't show me.
Yeah, that's why I made the face I did.
Yeah.
Jamie, I wanted to ask you about the lucid dreaming because there were several things that stuck out to me about it, with respect to the practice of law of one techniques like balancing and stuff like that. So did I hear you correctly that you seem to indicate that you didn't feel like you got a lot of like at least intellectual learning from that, like concrete lessons from those dreams? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's such becoming conscious in your dreaming. It's like waking up in a fantasy world.
Right.
It's so exciting. The colors are so vivid, and it's just so like, I think I'm still at the point where I am just need to get over how cool it is, and then focus on some things. But yeah, it's still, I'm not usually can't attain lucidity for a very long period of time. It's usually pretty fleeting.
Do you seek it?
I do.
Okay.
I do, with varying degrees of success.
Do you just seek it for
Is there effort involved in that practice?
Yeah, and it has to do with intention setting before you sleep. That seems to be like the most effective. And
what motivates you to expend that effort?
well, it's just so like to explore different parts of my identity, and to really understand like these dream characters. Like they're different parts of my psyche. Like what are they up to? What are they doing? Like what can I learn from them? Like I was
really blown away that you break the fourth wall with them. So
yeah, like
unabashedly, right?
Right. Like well,
yeah,
and then,
take off the mask. Like tell me what's going on here.
Right. Yeah.
that approach doesn't work. I've tried that too.
Yeah.
I did take note of the hug that you gave the one who called himself Death. It does seem to me like a lot of the things that I learned from dreams are not concrete lessons, but instead like feeling experiences. They're kind of like flavors that I take on. And
I like your expression, feeling tone.
Yeah. I like that a lot because it does have this like almost like a lot of times it's like these melancholy little like turns of melody. They feel like almost in the way that like a melody like coming in at the right point of the movie will just kind of like make you bawl. You know what I mean?
Right.
I did, and you had said something earlier about the way in which dreams can offer opportunities for balance, right? To meet patients with impatience. I think you were quoting from a Confederation source about that.
It was, yeah.
And it gave me the idea, what if you programmed for a lucid dream in which you like, because what it is like, it seems like there might be some way to take this lucidity and to be able to act in this symbolic way that would affect a balance, right?
Yeah.
Instead,
but would that,
hey, I can fly, you know.
Would that be dreaming? Would that still be dreaming?
I think it is.
It struck me that the hug seemed to be a kind of balancing thing. Like you were engaging with fear and you were providing love for that fear and kind of like showing both sides of the experience. There's still death, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, there's like, how would I say this? It is like you have nightmares, you have things that you're afraid of, like you're being chased. Like these are all common things, like being chased in a dream. Like sometimes I used to have dreams when I was younger about like when I was still using drugs, and like tornado dreams, like big uncontrollable like chaos and stuff like that. These are all things that fears, and then once you embrace them with kindness, that is I think it's a huge step towards acceptance, because they're all parts of you, you know. And most of these dreams are your characters represent you, and if there's something that you don't like or something that you're afraid of, by embracing these characters, and I think it makes a huge step towards balancing and acceptance.
I wonder, are there elements that one picks up along the way on the spiritual path, information, for example, that aid one in interpreting dreams? And I'm thinking specifically here of our knowledge of the chakras that the law one is so clear on.
Right.
So if you place a certain sequence of events within the proper framework of the chakras, like if it's fear, it's red ray; if it's personal identity issues, it'd be orange ray; if it's social issues, it would be yellow ray; and if it's attempting to open the heart, it would be green ray; if it's blocked communication, it would be blue. And if you can actually work an indigo ray, then that's when you would have your more lucid dreams, it would seem to me. So that seems to be a useful resource in figuring out how to interpret the messages coming from dreams, eh?
Yeah, you're spot on. I think Ra talks about like the dreams with regards to certain energy center blockages. That was going to be another future presentation, but like my recurring dream theme with the stuff in my mouth, that was seemed to be a very blue ray blockage that I was dealing with, and to the extent with which I have cleared it, I think I've done well, but we'll see. I'll report if I have that dream again and what was happening. But I think that it was like I had a big aha moment with that, and I think that was definitely an example of a Blu-ray blockage dream. But yeah, I think I have it in my little like notepad of quotes, like what energy center blockages, how they're the symbology that is then given through dreams. So. Yeah.
I noticed when I first started keeping my dream journal that I used to have a lot of dreams where I was in a basement, in some kind of school setting. So there would be teaching going on in this basement. And I finally figured out that I was doing remedial work in the lower chakras, so balancing, the usual stuff, So, it was always discouraging to me when I'd have those dreams and I'd wake up and I realized that, here I thought I had broken through to the higher chakras and I was continually doing lower chakra work.
Right.
Stephen, that reminds me of one of the most recurring dreams and I think other people have, which is going back to college and waking up one day and remembering that you're in a class that you haven't gone to all semester.
Oh my God.
and just trying to keep together in your head how you're going to explain this to anybody and how you could have been so stupid. Like, does anybody know what that means?
Oh, I don't know, Jeremy, but I have that one too. And that's like a current theme. Like, I don't know what it is.
That's got to be one of the most universally described dreams that I've ever heard,
Right.
Well, when I heard Steve talking about universal dream symbology, that has got to be like on the first page.
Well, here we are. We're in Earth. We're in third density. We're not in the density of understanding. We're still in a school, as it were, on various paths, like fumbling around in the dark. Like we are still in school. Yeah. I mean, that theme is part of our social memory complex of being like, what have we been neglecting? What class haven't we gone to? What,
Well, it gets even worse if you're a teacher by profession and you might not have been to class all semester.
There's terror on all sides. The prison guards are scared. The prisoners are scared.
Man, you forgot your pants that day.
I'm really interested in this, like in these two sort of different valences of dream information. The one that seems to be the communication of some sort of message, broadly speaking. I know I'm probably drawing too distinct of a line here, and one that seems to be the communication of a feeling, like a state of consciousness or like a state of feeling tone. That kind of and I'm wondering, like, I know the feeling very well of, effing up and being and being harried and feeling anxious. And I was just wondering if anybody had any ideas on what kind of message would be trying to be conveyed that could actually be acted upon or like balanced in some way, or maybe it just doesn't have a message at all. That's pretty much what I've been thinking, is that it's really just a balancing of anxiety that we have going on. It's like, I think for a lot of us, maybe, especially for wanderers, it's simmering underneath, right?
Yeah.
At least for the school one, maybe you guys can try this and report back. I feel like I've had the school one a lot in the past. In the last year, it hasn't occurred after this one new development in my school dreams. So similar dream, right? Yeah, I didn't prep. What the heck's going on? How am I going to pass the final exam? And I think the most recent one, like a year ago, I was like, screw it, I got this. I'm just going to take the final exam. Yeah, I didn't go to class. And then I pass. And then, so let me know if that solves it or if it's going to come back, because who knows?
Yeah, I remember like even recently too, where like in the dream I realized, well, I've already graduated college. Like what? Like what would I even be doing this for? Like I'm almost like I'm on the cusp of the realization. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it occurs to me, Nathan, that what you did is you balanced the one emotion with the other. There was the emotion of anxiety and lack of preparedness and feeling like you were the victim, or like I'm not putting it right, but like it was irretrievable, and you just brought a calm confidence to it.
Yeah, I mean, that might be it, because frankly, when you talk about like feeling things in your dreams, I almost never feel anything in my dreams. The one exception is the school dreams, but like nightmares, I'm usually not afraid. I'm just like, oh, okay. Like I can get shot in my dreams, and like the bullets will like go through me and not hurt me, like, or they'll miss organs, or they'll stop in front of me. Like even in zombie dreams, I'm like, oh, we need to get away from the zombies, but it's not like I'm afraid of the zombies. It's like, oh, I don't want to deal with, zombie attacks close up, so I'll go to this other place. So it's really interesting you mentioned that, because I normally never feel anything in my dreams. It's just, I don't know. Like one dream that would be considered scary, which wasn't for me, was like there's some like hideous demonic like shadow demon dog. This was like 8 years ago, and it was just like a few feet away from me, and I was like, all right, bring it on. Like not bring it on. I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna love you, and it like jumped into me, or not into me. It kind of like jumped at me and it dissolved. But like I don't know, man. I don't. It makes my dreams more boring.
You guys have awesome dreams compared to what I have. I feel like I have the most boring dreams. And I have that experience a lot of like being sort of emotionally neutral, but it makes those feeling tones that do emerge in the dream that much more poignant and eerie, right? Because they seem so dislodged from the normal way that emotions arise in normal life. I
wonder if like often I'll have a dream where I'm not like an active character and I'm just observing a drama of something else. I'm not like an active participant in the dream. And I think that may be connecting to the difference that you're explaining there, Jeremy, between like when I'm observing, it's not as emotional than if I'm an active participant. So,
and we should also remember that, according to the Confederation, sleep is a time where you don't just process these things, but sometimes you're actually engaged in activities with teachers in the astral plane or something like that. I don't have any direct experience of that whatsoever, but I wonder sometimes if the bizarre banality of my dreams is indicative of something deeper going on that I'm only getting the backsplash or the side effects of, right? Like my brain is making sense of something that can't be made sense of for waking life to try to conserve this thread of learning that's underneath all of it, right? That's a theory.
What I've usually found is every object has an emotional component if you find it. And so I would say you're not perceiving it. But when I've done dream interpretation with myself and others, and you just ask a lot of questions. And the most important question is, what is the feeling associated with this? What are the associations you make with the symbol? The primary question is, what feeling is associated with the symbol? And if there's a lot of like no feeling, it's like, well, let's dig a bit more. Let's find it, because the feelings unlock everything. I find.
So the idea is to take the lack of feeling in those things that are calling themselves out after all in my dream, and to push more into that. Am I hearing you right?
I think, like, I would say every object in existence has a different ways of perceiving it, like an emotional way of perceiving it, a symbolic, like a manifested way, like visual or audio or something, or a cognitive component. And you can perceive it in all of those ways, but at least in the dream interpretation, that all that I've done, it's the feelings that are that unlock it all, that are the most important, that you try to get to. And it doesn't mean you always will, but
no, it gives you a goal. It gives
that's
you
a very interesting. That's a very interesting point, Brian. Let me just think of it. You know, it seems to me that, I mean, it raises a fundamental question: is the real content of the dream the series of events that unfold in the dream, or the feeling tones of which you speak? So that the events are actually attempts to communicate those feeling tones in ways that can register, perhaps so as to be able to reproduce them in the conscious state. The very first dream that I ever had was when I was still in the cradle and I didn't have language yet. And I remember the dream very vividly. I still remember it today because that was a recurring dream that I had over a large number of years, well into the time in which I think it mostly ended somewhere in first grade, maybe in kindergarten. But I had this dream, and it was all feeling tones, and it was like it was things are going along smoothly, and then they get rough, and I'm trying to take up a relationship to this process so that I can keep the rough from happening, but I never succeed. You know, it's always an effort to hold on to the smooth before the rough comes. No, but the minute I remember that I'm holding on to the smooth, that's the first introduction to the rough. I mean, so it's this horrible, convoluted attempt to control that which can't be controlled. And so I feel like I'm completely at the mercy of this. And that same dream did start to get clothed in a sequence of events when my mother went to have her next. I was the oldest, and this was the next child up, which was 18 months later. Now he died. He didn't make it. But when she went away, it was very traumatic for me, and I started to clothe that dream in these representations of my mother being taken away to this mysterious place called the hospital, where she was going to have baby Michael, who then never came home. So that was pure feeling tone, and it was almost like it was feeling tones in search of a theme in order to convey that up to my conscious life. So I actually think that remark is right on point, Brian. I think that's a
like sort of to Jeremy's question about, is it a message or is it conveying? Like I don't know. The way I approach it is it's always a portrait. It's a portrait of the unconscious.
portrait sounds better than message to me, actually, ultimately.
And so it's like a spread out symbolic explanation of something, and usually that something is something you're trying to like, at least with most of the people that I've done this with, that they're trying to realize something. It's an insight they're trying to get about their current state. Like, for example, just having insight into the anxiety of, you know, like this traumatic event or a fear. Having that insight is like the first step. And I think that goes to what Jamie was saying, like, know yourself, the first step, right? Know yourself. Then once you have the insight, then you can accept yourself. And I found, yeah, you can do that in dreams as well, including lucid dreams. Yeah.
All of this has implications for the meaning of catalysis and emotion and waking life as well, I might add. Like, I wanted to ask you, Jamie, about symbolic interpretation of waking life. I imagine that probably is coming into play in a future.
Yeah, I would like to do a whole other thing on symbology. Like, deserves its own moment.
But the whole idea of time dilated phenomena as a way of manifesting, bringing a narrative to what is otherwise just a pure feeling. I think there's something really rich there to be mined, especially with respect to the archetypes and just what it means to have this experience and be learning and growing as a result of it. What does cause and effect even mean at that level, right? Like,
I think in this psychoanalytic approach, basically, all this stuff is symbolism, except for the feeling. The feeling is treated as like more real, as somehow more real, and there's a clear waking correlate to the feeling. And then all the other content. Well, but I mean, a lot of psychoanalysts then interpret all phenomena as symbolic.
Yeah. It is as if in dreams, the number one rule is that cause and effect is regarded far, far more loosely than we would accept in waking life, right? Situations that would take years,
well,
or
it's a narrative
or two. Yeah,
it's suspension of disbelief, right? It's like,
right,
this is Spider-Man got powers because he's bit by a spider. Like, well, you accept it in the story, in the narrative.
But isn't that what they often say about waking life too? That we tell ourselves stories about, waking life that keeps us in these patterns of thought, and that actualizes how we experience catalysis and all this stuff.
Yeah. And the value then again, like, of dreams is like with your ego being suspended and judgment being suspended. Like, you are in the dream, and it's like Kuo, or I don't remember who now, said like it's a truly undiluted experience, and you're just experiencing it, and you believe it. And like, it's interesting to see. That's one of the things that always fascinated me so much. Like, what am I up to? What am I experiencing? Like, it's just so fascinating to explore. And it's just you don't just get to suspend your ego in the conscious life. And, the left brain, if you want to say it, like, has so much effect on how you perceive things and how you experience things. And like that one quote said, like you have a better, clearer understanding of the catalyst you experience in your dream symbology that's presented to you than you do in your conscious, in your waking life. So it's incredible potential there.
Jamie, you also mentioned, I think, in your presentation about dreaming being in communication with our spirit. And that actually, I just thought of something that I've been thinking about, which is, I know my dog dreams. Like, when he's napping, he's like dreaming. And I'm just like, I wonder what he's dreaming about. And like, I'm so sure my dog has a spirit. Like, the way he looks at me, I know. And so I'm wondering if the fact that he's dreaming is an indication that like his spirit is, I don't know, like coming out.
Yeah, well, their second density friends, like, we are constantly showering them in third density light and love, and like, we anthropomorphize them, we project our own human attributes on them. Yep, like that comment there, like, we are basically accelerating their path to becoming a third density being. I think I would imagine for second density beings, like, they probably have a bit more like of an automatic function for dreaming, where they're just kind of, squirrel or whatever. But we are investing them with an incredible amount of love and energy, and they're on an accelerated path.
Yeah, I can just imagine all of our neuroses like just starting to be processed by them. It's with all the brain power they can muster, they're trying to figure this stuff out. I don't know. My beagles, when they're dreaming, I know exactly what they're doing, because it's the whole thing.
Right. Well,
Yeah, I know.
go on.
Oh no, I was just saying like I feel like my dog just has a lot of nightmares. Like he's like, "Arr,
Mm.
arr." Like he's afraid in his dreams, and he doesn't do that in real life. So it's like there's some fear deep within him that like I'm trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, well, they don't. I think the thing they struggle with is object presence, right? Like if you're not there, they think you're gone forever or something. And I think that would probably be like dogs being such like pack animals, like that everything is about their pack and their you and your family. And when you're not there, it can be an anxious time for them.
Jamie, that's really funny you brought that up, because isn't that part of the thing that actually does tend to get suspended sometimes in dreams? Object permanence, like things
Right.
in the existence and then they depart. Like,
Yeah.
I see that, like, you know, I put in the chat, like, you know, maybe dreams are a vector for investiture from third
Right.
density to third densities in.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
we know investiture can occur, you know, from higher densities and third density.
right. If you read anything about lucid dreaming, there's people who there's athletes that do their like neuroplasticity training. They do their like exercises. They plan their pole vault in their dreams. And this creates those neural pathways for them to then succeed in their conscious path too. So, I mean, that's a big deal. It's like scientifically verified.
That's actually the best example I've ever heard of something that's puzzled me in the raw contact, where they talk about the connections between spirit and mind and body, and then they say something like in rare instances between body and spirit.
Might have something there.
I think that might be the plant kingdom.
Oh, you think? Ah, wow. That's left field for me. I'd love to hear more about that. But maybe when we have more time.
One other thing about dreams, real quick, and this came up at a homecoming. I forget the guy's name. Big bulky guy. He lives in Louisville. He mentioned that with lucid dreams, you can actually start to do, I guess he called it adept level stuff in dreams. And I was curious, so I tried this because this is when I was trying to do lucid dreams. He's like, basically try meditating in a dream, and I did it like 2 or 3 times. And you know, he said, meditate in a dream. Try contacting whoever you want to contact. I contact my higher self. Got a very boring symbolic answer, so I guess I lost interest and stopped doing it. But I guess it's another area to explore. You definitely, when you're meditating, when you go lucid in a dream and then you start to meditate, it definitely feels like an instantly deeper meditation than you could do in waking life. It's definitely very interesting.
Huh. I'll have to try that.
Yeah, there's dream yoga. Like there's a whole like Eastern Tibetan practice of dream yoga, and it's all about attaining enlightenment, you know, in all aspects of living, like in your dreams, in your consciousness. And like they have all these practices about and meditation in your dreams and stuff too. That's some of that seemed very like advanced to me, or like you really want to dedicate yourself. So interesting.
I have a question. You know, in the law of one, they say something like along the lines of the fact that. I've been had my camera off. They say something about how your dreams can be Orion influenced. I don't want to pull the whole conversation that direction, but I am curious what you guys think. If you guys ever had a dream and you were like, well, I had a dream and I was like, I'm actually gonna like not really count that one because it seemed like, I don't know, it just seemed to tell me a negative message about somebody I loved, and I was just like, I don't care to think that way about them, kind of thing. So anyway, I don't know what you guys think about that kind of thing, but we should know.
Well, I've had dreams that I became convinced on analysis were negatively influenced. That didn't really start to happen in a very prominent way to me until I started to learn to channel, which actually happened to coincide with the time I started to keep a dream journal. So there it was. But uh, I think if there's something in the dream which incites one to feelings of anger and violence, you have the earmarks of that kind of influence. Rather than seeing specific interventions in the dream, my inclination was to see it more as an atmosphere that uh, infused what shall we call them? Feeling tones is a good word. Uh, uh, I think if you start to get into fifth density interventions and not fourth density interventions on the negative side, you might be able to get more focused intrusions into consciousness. I think maybe the fifth density visitor that became the constant friend of the original group in Louisville may have had that kind of finesse. But for the most part, I think, I mean, it's to have what we have 9 billion people on the planet, and it's not like there's 9 billion extra Orion beings available for attempting to crack our dream sequences. So I think it's more more at the universal atmospheric level, but one can take those atmospherics in, and and they do go in a direct. I mean, when you're trying to escape and that kind of thing, I think that that's an earmark of that kind of experience. That would be my take on that, but I'm not an expert in that area. So it's a good question.
I spent a few years. I became like a sleep talker, and I spent a few years like Alice's dog, where I would be like yelling out during dreams because they would be like, I don't think they were negatively influenced per se. It was just bad dreams, but I did have one interesting sleep talking dream. This was in this was in like April 2011, and I woke up in the middle of the night, sat up, woke up my girlfriend, and I said to her, "Buy Bitcoin." For real, for real.
I didn't know there were Bitcoin in 2011.
There were. It was priced around $1 to $5, and I did, and then I sold it all at $30. So I thought I was so clever. Like, wow, my dreams are pretty helpful.
Buy Bitcoin.
That's
I've
funny.
never gotten any financial advice.
But I didn't listen hard enough, right? Like I should have listened harder and held on to that.
I'm just
Bitcoin.
happy we were able to tie this discussion into Bitcoin.
I'm sorry.
On full circle now. Well, have we hung out and discussed this for long enough? We're coming up on the 2-hour mark. I got some pasta here. It's getting cold. Thank you so much, Jamie. This was such a great presentation. It opened up so many doors for me personally. There's so many things I want to talk about more, but man.